Nirja, also that is, again, I would reiterate that from adults, I have not expected perfection. I did not expect every parent, teacher, chosen parent, or doctor to know everything about intersex experiences. But I did hope for openness. I hoped for honesty. I hoped for adults that were choosing to listen over silence and compassion over fear. And I would say that. To parents, to caregivers, to educators and professionals that are out here today listening to me, you might not have grown up in a space where this language or understanding is there, but today you have an opportunity to break the cycles of secrecy. Instead of continuing into the cycle, you have an opportunity to break this. And remember, and to put this out as an unlearning space, is that silence is not going to protect children. Silence is always going to teach that children that their questions are dangerous, and it teaches that the parts of themselves must remain hidden. They are not deserve of being loved. And I think something that I would say as I think maybe as a prompt that one could use to maybe build conversation is to say begin with saying that I may not fully understand it, but I'm here willing to learn and listen to you, and you don't have to carry this alone. I think this is every young people, intersex or not, adolescent deserves to hear this. All of us are worthy of hearing to this, and that's all I'd like to share back. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Momo. So what you ended with, the prompt, that actually ties into what I wanted to say when you had finished speaking. Like I said, I've been scribbling notes, if you notice, but I may not fully understand it, but I would like to understand. I would like to listen to you. That is so powerful because I remember hearing a quote saying, "A parent is born when the first child is born," and today we live in a world where adolescents have enough tools at their hands, where they see out in the world much more than say 10 years ago. And um, and I think that today the adolescent will be like, "Hey, I show you where you can learn these things. Let's do this together." They might actually turn around and tell you, give you reading materials, give you the resources to help you understand. And the willingness itself might just be what is needed to open that door of communication, which is, like Momo said, not just for a queer adolescent young person, or for someone who has an intersex variation, but for all adolescents, given the world that we are living in today. Thank you very much, Momo. We are well within time, which means we'll get more time for discussion at the end. Thank you. With this, I will like to introduce our next panelist. Please welcome Vasiliki, who's also known as Vaso, a psychotherapist, intersex rights activist, and president of the board of Intersex Greece. She specializes in trauma therapy, addiction recovery, and supporting vulnerable groups, and has worked for many years both within NGOs and in private practice as a psychotherapist. Vasiliki is among the first intersex women to help initiate the intersex movement in Greece. In 2022, she worked closely with the Greek Ministry of Health on the landmark law banning intersex genital mutilation in Greece, and has since continued advocating for the rights and visibility of intersex people through public lectures, writings, trainings, and awareness campaigns. Welcome, Dr. Vaso. So happy to have you here on the panel.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here. Thank you all for having me. I'm so excited that 83 people are joining this meeting, so we have a huge chance to visibility. And at this point, I would like to say that I'm not only a psychotherapist and not only an activist, I'm also an intersex woman myself, and a proud one. And this is what I'm going to share with you today, not only theory, but lived experience. And I would like to thank Momo for being that great. I was related so much to everything they said. And thank you so much again for having me.
Vasu, I will jump right into the first question we have for you. Momo has already set the stage for us for this question. Momo spoke so much about navigating secrecy, stigma, or feeling different during adolescence. And that usually is a time when peer acceptance becomes incredibly important. So, what kind of psychological impact does this have on how peer support have on how intersex adolescents view their bodies, relationships, and what impact can that have on their self-esteem and well-being during adolescence?
Yes, thank you so much. Please do allow me to be a little bit sentimental because, as you understand, I don't share a theory with you, but also part of my experience, and things are not great. You know what we know about intersex is really few things. So many people think that the binary is the normal. By saying normal, we only talk about typical. Everything is normal. We intersex people are normal. So when doctors are misinformed or they're full ignorant about the intersex situation, you understand that they navigate the families in very damaging ways. So the child early in their life understands that it's broken, it's not normal, it's almost monstrous and has to live in secrecy and in shadows. Adolescence is a vulnerable period for every person. There is a need to belong, to fit in with your friends and the same age people with you, and to create an identity and to experience intimacy. So imagine having a body that do not follow adolescence. No, everyone's body changes, but an intersex child's do not. And medical community, not all of them, of course, but most of them um, are framing the intersex situation with a very harmful way. You know, the theory about trauma is that it's not the fact itself, but it's how we frame what has happened to us. So already the doctors guide the family, that family are moving from a place of love and fear and misinformation to protect their child by saying nothing. So at this point, we have ruined the capacity of the child to approach other people. One child has to be isolated and feel different very early in their life. So the message is that your body is abnormal, is broken, it's not normal, and you have to hide it so that you can fit in a few ways. So it ruins the sexuality. It ruins the capacity to flirt, to enjoy your body, to feel the pleasure. Most of you must have heard uh, a primary defense of our system called freeze. This is the most common defense that an intersex child uses. There is a withdrawal from our bodies so that we can handle uh, how we fit with our teammates. And only later on, if things are go well, one can start experience their body and their pleasure after having too much therapy maybe, and support from their family and social support can have the same base that an endosex child has from early their life. So there is almost a panic if people understand that I am intersex, they will misjudge me, they will fetishize me, they will ask invasive questions that I'm not sure that I can answer them, because no one explains too much to the intersex adolescents what happens to their bodies. There is only stigma, there is only shame, there is only secrecy. So there is a child really who tries to pretend normality so that they can live with all of you intersex people. This is heartbroken. I have statistics in my hands about the rates for mental health issues, about suicidality, about anxiety, about depression. The rates are multiplied by a lot. Let me tell you on this, please. In the general population, the rates for depression are around 5 to 8%. On intersex participants, it's 61.1. Can you understand how difficult it is? And you know, since intersex situation carries too much stigma, and no one talks about it, so no one knows things. Teachers do not know. Healthcare professionals do not know. And so the story goes, and those rates are still there. So we're here today trying to bring some visibility because we are almost 2% of the people living among you. We're everyday people. We get angry, we fall in love, we are disappointed, we get tired, we're dreaming of things, and trying to have the same kind of life with everyone else. And for me, adolescence is an era of trauma, pure, heavy trauma for an intersex child, because it cannot be supported well enough in general. Maybe there are exceptions, but in general, that's the case here. This is where we stand now. That is what we're trying to change with us being here. I'm sorry if I bring some sadness here, but that's the truth that we live in.
Vasu, thank you very much for bringing the truth, like you said. Um, just to set the context for all who are listening, when Vasu spoke about how it's not an actual emergency, but it doesn't fit into the status quo of what the world sees humans as, right? A very binary perspective of humans in terms of male and females. When you are faced with the truth that human beings are a diverse species with a diversity of sexual variants and sex characteristic variants, that is when a social emergency is engineered. And that is something that Vaso has fought against too. Like intersex genital mutilation is one way of trying to uh, invisibilize intersex variations and intersex persons' existence. And Vaso has been talking about that also during their when they answer the question. Uh, we will hopefully speak a little bit more about this in the discussion section, Vasu. From what you spoke about, how now that, like you said, adolescence is a very difficult, traumatic time for an intersex adolescent. What would a healthy caregiver support actually look like during this time when a child is growing into a young adult, when relationship with the caregiver is changing, when everything is changing for a child and adolescent at that time? What would a healthy caregiver support look like?
Okay, thank you so much. Firstly, they have to be well informed. They have to communicate with civil societies, with the intersex organizations, so that they can have original informations and know what our community brings to the table, what we need. So, of course, they have to be affirmative, and they have to speak an appropriate age language, a language that's not shame-based, an inclusive approach. An adolescence is not a child. They can understand. They can have. We can have their consent. We have to inform them. We have to be honest with them so that they can feel safe, so that they can feel their bodies. We can feel our bodies as a safe place to be. So, if one approaches an intersex adolescence and tell them the truth, the whole truth, this is what happens. It's normal. It happens. It doesn't change who you are, your personality. You have to decide what you really want to do with your body because, you know, we have to decide. You have not you in person, in general, you have to let us decide our identity, our sexual orientation, and if we want unnecessary medical interventions in our bodies. So, if intersex adolescents are engaged to this dialogue, this is um, this is an element to the whole trauma experience from the medical community. Um, Healthcare professionals, they don't have to know everything. They don't have to know enough, but they do have to ask for more and learn. They do have to cooperate with us because, we are here, we are volunteers. I'm not working right now. I'm a volunteer. I'm an activist. And there are plenty of us to answer any question. Please cooperate with us and you'll get any information because believe me, I know hundreds of intersex people. They're beautiful people, they're everyday people. And you know what? We're kind of having a bad education, so we learn to be extremely resilient. So maybe we have valid and more than valid informations for you. Uh, that's it. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Vasu. That was your entire discussion and answers. They were very so powerful and so personal. Thank you very much. I think here I would like to just take a few seconds to highlight something Vasu said, because it's very important to understand. An adolescent, a person having an intersex variation, it does not speak to other aspects of their identity. It does not speak to their sexual orientation. It does not speak to their sexuality. It does not speak to their gender identity. Uh, to give an example, a person have two people having the same intersex variation might identify as different genders. They might have different sexual orientation. So the intersex variation will not determine that person's identity in a whole, so that is something that is very important for us to understand, which means that each approach to each person has to be focused on that person itself, whether it's health, whether it's at home, whether it is a school. That has to be there, and we have to build that language within ourselves to speak about this. Thank you very much, Vasu.
Thank you so much, Steve.
Yeah. So I will now introduce our next panelist. Nat. Uh, Nat Francis is an interdisciplinary arts, music, and language educator. As a transmasculine and autistic person, his practice as an educator is informed by neurodivergence and queer affirming pedagogies. Nat, welcome.
Hello, hello. Thank you so much for having me. I hope I'm audible.
Yes, you are. Lovely
Great.
to see you. Um, so, Nat, as an educator, schools are often the first step out into the real world for children. And by adolescence, they have learned to navigate a little bit of school life, learned to step out into the bigger world, see outside of their families. Could you please tell us, give us a context to as to how the school, your school, came into being, and a little bit more about how the school ensures inclusiveness?
Hi. I come from a space called Bidiru Learning Center. Bidiru in Kannada means bamboo. And we were very conscious about the fact that when we draw from bamboo, we are drawing from its qualities of resilience, of strength, flexibility, and a refusal to stop growing. Because I don't know if you know much about bamboo, it will grow anywhere and as fast as you can watch it with your own eyes. So there's an inevitability about childhood, and there's an inevitability about growth and growing up that I think adults have to learn retroactively that it is up to us to guide growth. Whether we are doctors, parents, teachers, educationists, we don't get to decide who these kids are. We get to listen to them and let their growth and development influence how we care for them. And so we wanted to be very conscious about the fact that if we are an alternative teaching and learning space, alternative to what? Critical pedagogy teaches us that one of the first things you do when designing an inclusive space to educate the future is to dismantle common sense assumptions, dismantle the idea of common sense. And that includes the gender binary. That includes what a man's life looks like, what a woman's life looks like, and whether there's anything between these discrete categories that we've been taught. So when we built Bidiru, and we are constantly building it, we wanted to make sure that teachers, educators, students, children, the idea of learning, the idea of authority, the idea of knowledge is a fluid one. And if we want to be inclusive and not just as a social media strategy buzzword that inclusivity is going to be the name of the game, that means we have to have humility as educators, adults, teachers, practitioners. And so when we claim to be a teacher, when we claim to be a leader in a school, when we claim to care for children, we have to be very, very aware of the fact that children are the largest minority of the world, and they are very much a minority, a global minority. And so, as educators, practitioners, whether you're a teacher, parent, adult, trusted person in this child's life, you have power and privilege over this young person. And that is something that we try not to take for granted. And so students teach us who they are. We build the language, the narrative, the idea of community, of the behaviors and norms, culture, values, policy. We model it for each other. We generate it together. And it's not a transmission of power from across a power, it's not a transmission of knowledge and information across a power differential. It is the generation of values, ideology, identity, trust amongst a teaching learning community. And so our community is, we're conscious of the fact that there are multiple stakeholders in a child's life, right? There are the teachers, there are the parents and families or the trusted adults in their child's life. And the idea of school being, that this first, third space that children have access to. We are conscious of the fact that there's a world out there outside of school and home. And so, who we bring to this space as temporary practitioners or field workers or intellectuals and artists and creators, we want to show children that there are life worlds outside of home and school. That means interacting with people different from you. That means deciding I am me and you are you, and there is a difference between us is not the end all and be all of that conversation. So when we talk about inclusivity, it is a muscle that you flex every day. And that means that as teachers and adults, you are going to learn a lot more than you will expect if you're open to it. If you're open to it. So whether this is along the lines of disability, invisible or visible disability, whether it's neurodivergence, whether it's regional differences in language and access to a print-rich environment at home or outside, whether it is your class position, your caste position, and your representation in a world that is saturated with media, online and offline, right? These are things that, as curators of education and experiences, that you have to be willing to engage in. And it will be uncomfortable. It will not be easy. Again, we don't demand perfection from the adults in the world around us, but we do demand that we get up and we try. We look at who these kids are and we ask them that they trust us to listen and that we can come up with what the demands of the space are and what their needs are together, and we try to meet this mutually.
Thank you, Nat. Throughout our conversation today, the words that have been coming up repeatedly were listening, willingness, and wanting to engage is something that you have highlighted a lot. And thank you very much. I mean, all that you have said, we, all of us, irrespective of whether being educators, whether we have children, we don't have children, as people living in the society, it's something that we need to work on creating around us. And what you said about learning, that we are different, but that's not the end of the world. That is such a precious knowledge to have in this world, because so much is happening around us, and that is really something that is very powerful. Really something that is very powerful. Thank you very much. When you were speaking earlier to Sanjana, and you had mentioned, and this is also something that comes out in our conversation with educators when we are trying to talk to them about bringing inclusive practices within schools, how there are systemic barriers, whether it is policy or other things, and the education system as it in itself is a giant slow moving organism, I would call it. It's almost animated, given how it works. How, if there are educators who want to bring in this change, who want to bring in this muscle that we flex every day, like you said, inclusivity, what could you tell us about what schools face, or teachers who want to do that face, like systemic barriers like policy, etc.?
Absolutely. So I can only speak to you. I can't speak at scale. I am part of a very small teaching learning community. And even at this scale, it has been intensely difficult sometimes to get the ball moving because um, teaching in today's day and age is like putting out a house fire. There's only so many, buckets of water at your disposal. But when you slow down and take stock of values and what you would like to model, you do come up with the glaring question of how do you empower teachers, first of all, to be leaders and model a certain type of attitude? And what do these organizations actually value when it comes to that question? I feel that administrators, management, and especially in the privateering section, the private education industry is it's a huge monolith sometimes. It does definitely feels that way. But if you want to build inclusive practices, communities, and policies, you have to be willing to break down the hegemony of hierarchy in these spaces. For-profit spaces are not always going to see eye to eye with the true diversity and demographics of their community. And that is one of the biggest uphill battles you face as a practitioner, as a teacher, as a minority, as a student who's different in any sort of way. And so you have to empower teachers, you have to be able to look them in the eye and say, you know your students best. What can we, the school leaders, the people with the pockets, the people with the decision-making capacity, what do we need to do to help the students in your classroom thrive? And that is frankly a conversation a lot of school leaders are not willing to have. Sometimes it makes no sense for them to even engage in this very deeply interpersonal, humanistic, affirming kind of way. And that is something we want to see less of. And as a smaller space, Bidru, the way that we do it is that teachers are we operate as a flat hierarchy wherever possible. So we are the people who are engineering these pedagogies. We are the people who are tweaking the curriculum. We are the people who are conversing amongst each other, saying, "Hey, I've noticed this is up with this kid. You want to have a discussion about it and see what we can come up with together?" These are the conversations we are training ourselves and each other to have because it is how we keep the lights on. You know, so without being willing to kind of dive in deep and have conversations about your students and what you would like to achieve with them beyond the scope of academics, you will not see what inclusivity has to offer for you as educationers and practitioners. So I think I'm very safe and comfortable in the alternative education space. I don't envy teachers, educators, intersex individuals, and queer educators who are fighting a very different uphill battle at larger schools, especially in the Indian subcontinent.
Just a minute. Sanjana,
Yes, teacher. You're on mute, Nisha.
I thought I got a call from you, but yeah.
I did. I texted you something. Yeah, you can see that.
Okay, so
Yes.
actually, I wanted to, when you were speaking, Nat, you know, I myself was a child, I myself went to school, and I realized that when you were speaking, in my mind, I had a flash of teachers who were coming to my mind for great reasons and not so great reasons. And I was reminded of what Momo said earlier, that they might not remember the technical stuff you talked to them about or spoke to them about, but they will remember how you made them feel, if you felt you were safe with them. And I am an intersex person and endosex person. Of context, anyone who does not have an intersex variation usually can use the word endosex to identify themselves, so that matters of appropriation and misrepresentation do not happen. And that is also a way I have, having worked in with intersex community for over a decade now. I have also often been asked the question if I am intersex. I do not think so. I have not had tests done that gave me an answer to it, so I identify or understand myself to be endosex so far. But I do not have to be an intersex person to know that inclusivity and equity is every human being's right. It's human rights. It's not about intersex rights. It's human rights. I just wanted to mention that. But coming back to topic, Nat, when you were speaking about that, talking about how we, you know, the larger schools have more difficulty. The reason I was remembering my teachers were because we have champions for students in almost every school. Given that teaching is not a high paying job, many teachers come to this because they have a passion for the students they work with, for children, for teaching itself. And having worked with teachers, trying to understand how how what they can do within their classrooms, especially the homeroom teachers or class teachers, how they, the ones who work with the child throughout everything, over the ones who come to the PTA meetings. I just wanted to say I have met a lot of teachers over the years like that who have come to workshops, to one-on-one workshops where they could understand the language to use, how to support their students. And I just wanted to put it out there because it, like you said, it's a very difficult uphill battle, but it is not hopeless. There are people out there doing the work. I have worked with Enfold, associated with Enfold, trying to, create awareness among educators. So there are organizations like that out there. In fact, the coalition itself is a effort in that direction in one aspect. So I just wanted to mention that because I really, I am really honored to be among people who are working on ground doing all this work. And I just wanted to say it. Now I'll stop my monologue and come back to topic. Nat, I just became a little emotional because all of this is so important. Yes. So coming back to topic, I would like to ask you about how, as a student, you what brought you to be an educator?
I'm a bit of a Nepo baby in that sense. I kind of got roped into Bidru because my own parent is one of the founding members. And I specialized in inclusive education during my own, education journey as well. But what I learned about kind of wanting to be an educator myself is that there is, for purely selfish reasons, there is a sense of restorative justice in kind of retroactively going back and seeing what made me feel dehumanized as a young queer trans person in the school, what made me feel isolated as an autistic individual growing up in formal education, and what can I bring to the table, not to retroactively heal my own trauma, but to kind of take stock of what the need of the hour is for children today. And like you said, we they may not remember the content of what I'm saying to them, but what I can take pride in is that I am a safe person for these kids. And I value that above anything else, is that I am viewed as someone who is safe to navigate whatever hardship that may come our way together. We can do it together. And oftentimes that would mean advocating on behalf of that student with their family members. Sometimes it would be, again, triangulating with an entire network of well wishers and stakeholders to center around this kid and decide what the next step is. But again, the idea that schooling can be centered around empathy, around growth, around mutual understanding, and around safety is something that I wanted to see happen for myself. And so I think that's why I'm very attracted to the space of education. And it has taught me more about myself because of the work that we're able to do with these kids.
Um, uh, if you could briefly tell us about how students, for even students in alternative learning spaces, they still have to enter the mainstream during the examinations the way it is.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely.
So how do they navigate that? How are they supported in navigating this?
So we have a core curriculum, which is everything that you would expect a school-going child to kind of do. There's your literacy, there's your numeracy, uh, there's your healthy understanding of scientific principles, of the environment around you. We have a very healthy, rigorous core curriculum. But in addition to that, it's not just what we do, it's the way we do it. We have an arts-based practice that looks at the material history of the world around us. We look at handicraft, we look at production models, we look at the ecosystem of production itself. We have a desire, deep desire to connect to life worlds as a way of learning. And so it doesn't mean that, okay, you have your science textbook and it teaches you what you need to do about science. It means we visit the museum and we understand bugs. We speak to an entomologist. We have them take us through habitats, myriads of habitats to understand the delicate infrastructure and balance of life in food networks and systems. It means that we rely on practitioners and guides around us in the environment, outside of the classroom, so to speak, but integrate it inside as well. And so by the time our kids are ready to sit whatever exams it is, whether it's NIOS, which is the system that we model, which for reference is the National Institute of Open Schooling, it is a very accessible, widely recognized board of education in India. A lot of kids with disabilities, a lot of kids with alternative career paths end up vying for the NIOS system. And it is a balance of homeschooling and center-based schooling that, again, depending on the region, depending on your subjects, depending on your support network, children are 100% able to go through with, shining performances and acceptances into standard universities and whatnot. And so it's that we are multimodal. That means there are multiple modalities to understand possibly the same thing in multiple perspectives. We are multisensory. We understand that education is not only cerebral, it is an embodied practice. And we are multidisciplinary, which means that there is no championing of one stream or knowledge system over the other. We understand that these are very, very fluid, multi disciplinary systems that you cannot really neglect or ignore and favor. And so it's not that we want children to be kind of saturated and overwhelmed by the enormity that there is to learn. It's just that whatever they choose, they will have a very, very balanced, curious, and kind of invigorated approach towards it. And that's what we kind of hope for.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Nat. I am sure you will be bombarded by questions during our discussion time. Please be prepared for that.
Absolutely.
Meanwhile, Crystal, I would like to introduce Crystal, our next panelist. Please welcome Crystal Hendricks, a queer, intersex feminist and human rights defender with over 10 years of experience in intersex advocacy. Crystal currently serves as the sex characteristics specialist at ILGA World and has previously worked with Iranti and supported Intersex South Africa. She is a founding member and current chair of the Southern African Intersex Forum, serves on the board of African Intersex Movement, and is an advisory board member of the Intersex Human Rights Fund. Crystal is deeply committed to ensuring that intersex people can freely exercise their rights and freedoms, and to making sure intersex voices lead the conversations and policy discussions that shape their lives. Welcome, Crystal. So happy that you could join us today.
Thank you so much for having me today, and for everybody on this call. It's such a pleasure to be here today.
I will jump into our first question. I think I have said that about 4 or 5 times already, but I will jump into our first question. Adolescence is often the stage where young people begin asking deeper questions about their bodies and medical histories. And from a rights and ethical standpoint, how should we think about, how we should think about an adolescent's right to information and participation in decisions about whether it is medical surgeries, ongoing care, or hormonal interventions. It's also about their own bodies and autonomy. How should we look at it and think about it?
Thank you so much, and thank you for that amazing question. And again, thank you so much to everyone for taking the time out to join us today for this very important and vital conversation. I tend to talk a bit fast, but I'll go a bit slower because we also have sign language interpretation. But I think also myself, as an intersex person that was diagnosed with complete androgen sensitivity syndrome, I think of a time when the school does sexual education, and they speak about the development of male bodies and female bodies. And when I was in high school and all my friends was going through puberty, and my body was just not developing like everybody around me. And I think at times I felt, very, isolated, and I felt, that I was a bit different. And I also felt I was erased from conversations because during biology, I was not talked about, my body was not talked about. And I mean, as an intersex person, I love being intersex. I feel that my body is whole and that my body is perfect. And the question is like, why are we not talking about intersex adolescents? Why do we not talk about intersex people going to puberty and what that looks like for an intersex person? And I think this is such an important question, for all of us. But I think adolescence is a critical stage because often it's the first time that young people begin, start asking questions about their bodies, especially about their medical history, and also why decisions was made for them without their involvement, because most of intersex children that goes through surgeries, most of the time it's informed by doctors, and normally there's no consent because they use fear tactics on parents that if we don't do the surgery, your child won't be normal, or if we don't do the surgery, your child can develop cancer, your child will feel out of place, your child won't feel part of, society. And a lot of the time, or most of the times, these surgeries are done without involvement or consent of the intersex child. And I think from a human rights and ethical perspective, adolescents have the right to information, participation, and bodily autonomy and informed consent, right? It's our bodies, so we should be the ones that make decisions about their bodies. And at the end of the day, these issues are not just medical issues, right? They are issues of dignity and personhood. And what we continue to see globally, like, is the tension between parents and medical authority and autonomy of the young person itself, because a lot of the times the doctors feel that they are making the right decision and they have all the power to make the decision for the intersex child. And also because of parents' expectations, oh, I'm having a girl or I'm having a boy, and wanting to fit in these boxes of binary of pink box and blue box. Our parents also then feel they feel under pressure to make a decision, and also to go back to their communities to say, oh, we had a girl and we had a boy. But in the same breath, it's not really celebrated if someone says, oh, well, I had a child with a diverse variation in the sex characteristics, and my child is intersex. And I think it all starts from where we need to celebrate intersex birth, just like we celebrate any birth. And also, in many contexts, decisions about surgeries, hormonal intervention, or ongoing medical treatment are still primarily made by doctors and parents, and like I said, it's based on the social ideas of what normal looks like, and if it is medically necessarily to have these, and a lot of times I think of a time when I went through surgery and I had my gonads removed, and the doctors put me on hormone replacement therapy, which was estrogen. And I was, I think, 16 at the time, but I really didn't understand what is estrogen. I didn't understand what is estrogen going to do to my body, and why do I have to take these tablets? Why do I have to go through these surgeries? And as many of us, especially from the global south, our first language is not English, and sometimes we don't even understand the language, that the doctors are using to explain these very profound situations. And I think the problem is that many intersex adolescents only discover parts of their medical history later in life because of a lot of secrecy and shame and trauma. I think for myself, I knew obviously I had the surgery at 16. I knew I had my gonads removed. I knew I was on hormone replacement therapy, but I actually didn't know I was intersex. I had no language of my variation. It was only at the age of 22 when I did my own research and I went for a genetic test. I found out that I was born with a XY chromosome and I had internal underdeveloped gonads. And, I found the word intersex online, but the word was never actually told or explained to me. And that can have profound mental health impacts, including anxiety and depression and a mistrust in healthcare systems. Because I think for the longest time I was very, depressed, and I'm gonna give a trigger warning. There's been many times in my adolescent stage where I wanted to, unalive myself because I felt so different, and I felt that no one in the world is like me, and there's no one I can talk to about this, and no one can understand this. And there's many a times when I've fallen ill, but I will treat myself at home because I have this fear of going, to a doctor, because I feel that I can't trust doctors because they don't always make the best decision for me. And I think adolescence is already a very vulnerable stage, in our development, as human beings, and to still go through all of of that, it's extremely difficult. We have seen, like, like in the past few years, that a lot of laws has been evolved, but there are still major gaps. Like right now, there's really there's about 6 states that protects intersex people from unnecessary, surgeries, and there's still a lack of awareness and educations in communities and societies. I'm a firm believer of a person that says that there needs to be protection, right? And there needs to be laws and policies to protect us. But at the end of the day, if we don't change people's hearts and minds, and if we don't change the perception people have of intersex people, there will always be this discrimination and this trauma that really affects us, in our adolescence. So I think it's also important that we know that intersex, adolescents, they should be empowered, with age appropriate information. They need to have psychosocial support, because I think I had my surgery, I was put on hormone replacement therapy, and I went home. I never saw a therapist, I never saw a counselor, I had no peer support, and I had no meaningful, like, participation in anything around my body. So in that time, I felt very, like, very disengaged, very erased, and very isolated. So I think personally, also as an intersex person, from the global south, I know that these conversations are deeply personal, and sometimes we don't want to talk about it because of the shame and the stigma and the secrecy. And I think that means many intersex young people grow up feeling like something about them is hidden or fixed. And I think we really need to change this whole thing of around secrecy, and really be open to having conversations, that affirms intersex people, conversations that's about honesty, autonomy, and support for intersex people. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Crystal. Thank you very much. So I'm just going to take a minute and just connect a thread that has been coming up from the beginning, from the time Sanjana introduced, the context and set the stage for us to talk about the words secrecy, stigma, of intersex genital mutilation, of need for information, need to know what is happening, the need for language. All of you, all of us have spoken about every single one of that. And earlier I was saying that as an adolescent growing up, just navigating peer pressure, navigating school life, navigating who I am, which is a question I still ask myself, right? Or without having layers of societal pressure built into, of whether it is of my identity, whether it is of my body. I have lived experience of how difficult that was. But as layers are built up, as I'm in my head, I see a track, running track with the obstacles put up for the jumping runs. I forget what they're called, but that's what is coming up. The number of the ones that come that way, that is also just popping up in my head, because adolescents, children have to go through so much to just get through a day in their life. And one thing that popped up in my head was what you were speaking about surgeries and everything, about unnecessary things, not knowing, not having the language to speak about it. I have met so many intersex persons who thought they're the only ones in the world, because they did not, the secrecy is such so great that they did not know there are others. They thought they're trans people because that's the conflation is out there. They had not heard of intersex persons or intersex variations. So the alienation from yourself and from the others, it's just too much to express in words. One thing that I wanted to connect to what Vasu said was that often unnecessary medical interventions, or even any medical intervention done, and that is hushed up, and I will use the word hushed up, right? That is that sweep under the rug motion that the society puts the family through. Adolescents often raise questions about that during that time. And At that time, medical history, that is why I was like, they have to add that along with asking questions becomes difficult, because parents have to talk about what not just what is happening at this moment, but what has already happened and they had no knowledge about. This is something I
Mm.
also was talking about earlier. But given all this, my role today is also to unite all of us, I think, in hope going forward, because that is very necessary. Otherwise, why are we doing what we are doing, right? In from that angle, what would you could you tell us, could you talk to us about some given your vast experience around the various organizations and international organizations that you have worked with, some empowering practices or laws that you know of around globally made to safeguard the rights and hope?
Yeah, and I think it's so important to, to have hope, and to remain positive. Like a lot of people always ask me, Crystal, how do you do this work? And you always have a smile on your face. And I tell them, but there was a time when I never had a smile on my face. And it's important for me now that I affirm myself and, I accept myself. And it's important to have hope, for a hopeful future. But I think in the last few years, we have seen some encouraging global examples that shows change is possible, even though progress remains uneven. I think one of the strongest example that a lot of intersex people always celebrate is Malta. Malta, which is the first country that prohibited non-consensual medical interventions on intersex minors through their gender identity and expressions and sex characteristics act. And this was only in 2015. It's just over 10 years ago. And it was such an amazing opportunity. And also, seeing someone on the call from Greece as well. Greece is also one of the countries that has introduced legal protections, including sanctions for violations for bodily autonomy and intersex children's rights. Other countries that we've seen that has some protections is countries like Portugal, Iceland, Germany and Spain, and even Kenya in Eastern Africa. All of them have taken steps to restrict unnecessary surgeries on intersex minors. Although as intersex activists or as intersex people, we are aware that there's still a difficulty in regards to implementation of these laws, and there's still a lot of loopholes that exist that is very that is very concerning. But I think beyond legislation, some other empowering things is that we've seen a lot of peer-led intersex support networks, right? I think right now in this year, 2026, it's very easy for an intersex adolescent to find information and to find data around intersex people. I think I see Heike on the call. A few years for many of us, there was little to no information. There was no peer support. There was no one you could talk to. There was no one that that you knew existed like you. And we've seen now a lot of peer support. We've also seen that a lot of medical doctors have also started to be more positive and more truthful around information that they share with parents. And we've also seen a lot of medical doctors engaging with intersex communities to set up standard operating procedures on how to care, for intersex adolescents and intersex children, and even for intersex adults as well. We've also seen a lot of countries asking for delaying in these surgeries until the child is at the age of consent, where they can make a decision for their body, obviously depending on what the age of consent is in different countries. But also we have also seen a shift globally, that intersex issues are increasingly being recognized. We've seen the the Human Rights Commission in Geneva have the first ever resolution calling to end harmful medical practices against intersex people. We've seen the Office of the High Commissioner on Human Rights in Geneva launch an amazing report that speaks to the protection of intersex people. We've also seen the UN treaty bodies like the Committee Against Torture calling intersex genital mutilation a form of torture and asking for the torture to be stopped. So we see a lot of international involvement, and all of this has increased, and all of it is speaking about protection, bodily autonomy, and informed consent, which I think it's very important. And I also think that one of the most empowering developments is also the growing leadership of intersex people themselves. I think I've seen this year or the last few years so many intersex organizations starting in countries where I never thought, there would be an intersex organization exist. I've seen intersex activists part of shaping laws, research, healthcare conversations, and, mental health support. So I've seen intersex people have been more visible, and they've created a lot of awareness, which is so very important for intersex adolescents. So they have things to research on and, people to reach out to. And I think I wish, when I was 16, I had all of this information that's out there now. But I'm also grateful that I've been able to work towards getting all of these information, because I think ultimately empowering practices are not only about stopping harm. It's also about creating an environment where intersex adolescents can grow up, with dignity and accurate information, and also have the freedom to be themselves, to define themselves. Often someone would ask me, what is my biggest hope for the future for intersex people? And I would say, I just want him to exist. Like, I just want him to exist, and I just want him to be happy and have dignity and have self-love, and, know that they are amazing just the way they are. Because I often feel that we take for granted that thing of just being able to exist and not feeling like a medical experiment. And I think it's just important for intersex people just to exist. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Crystal. Thank you. Thank you, all of you. Because not only have you all spoken from your own lived experiences and from, taken a step away and spoken about the world at large, you also connected to, and this was not practiced, by the way, to everyone who's listening. They did not talk to each other and connect each answers to each other, but it actually shows how much what Crystal spoke about, how much of a cooperation between societies, between nations, between people have been, and how progress in one part of the country is inspiring progress in the other part of country. And when I talk about progress, I'm specifically talking about empowering rights of people. And this is a very monumental moment for me, and I would use that word not lightly, because when I started working with intersex rights in 2014, I had the experience of, from the first question I said, who are intersex persons? That is where I started from. And then what Crystal said, I had the fortune to see the community grow, to see the people who I used to advocate for take over that platform and talk about, stand at world platforms and speak about what needs to be said, to speak the truth out loud and to everyone who's hearing, no matter how uncomfortable they were getting. And I see the same spirit here. And thank you so much, all of you, Momo, Vaso, Nat, and Crystal, for joining. And I would also like to thank Dr. Renuka and Saurav for interpreting all of that we have said so that everyone can hear us and listen. Thank you very, very much. And Sanjana, I think I will hand over the session to you now.
Thank you so much, Nija, and thank you so much to all the panelists. We will open the discussion for question now. I do see some of the questions. Nat has responded to one question. And please feel free to unmute yourself and ask the question. Um, Yogesh Serene is saying that do we have any data or information about how many intersex persons have been trained as medical professionals globally? And they would be the ideal people to lead the movement. So anybody from the panelists or the moderator can respond to this question. And Shlesha, Anala, can you put everybody, all the panelists on the spotlight?
May I?
Yes, please.
Thank you. I have a disappointing answer. We don't. We're at the stage that we collect data about intersex people, not for exclusively groups within intersex community at all. Here in our country, we don't know the percentage of intersex people. Imagine that. So we don't have much information. We are uh, having our baby steps here. We're moving very fast, but we are at the start.
Yeah, I definitely agree with Vaso. I think data is very important, and there's a big lack of data and research in intersex communities. UN experts estimates that about 1.7% of the population are intersex, but we've also seen that a lot of that data did not even count Africa and a lot of Asian countries. It was more data based on Europe and the Americas, so it didn't really include us. So it's definitely not 1.7%, it's much larger. But also a very important person to share, and I'll add the name in the chat, but it's Morgan Carpenter. Morgan Carpenter is actually the creator of the intersex flag, and they are based in Australia, but they are also a bioethicist, and they have completed their PhD, and they are currently a professor at the University of Sydney, and they work a lot on medical health for intersex people. So if Yogesh wants to know more about them, their name is Morgan Carpenter, but we can share the name, and they work in the medical field. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Crystal and Vasu. I just want to add here that recently India had a census study. They were collecting data for the population. And while they were collecting the data, under the sex category, they had only mentioned male and female. So one, like let alone the medical professionals being trained, we don't even have enough data about how many intersex people are there. Like globally, the percentage it shows is 1.7% of the global population has intersex traits. However, there have been so many people, intersex people, who have not been recorded, let alone given the rights or medical professionals being trained. So they're not part of the data itself. Yeah.
I
Any other?
last point here, because like I said, lots of intersex persons don't have access to language to identify as intersex persons themselves, which means that level of invisibilization also happens within the population. So the data that we do have, grateful that we have it, but it's grossly underestimated and grossly outdated also. Yes.
Absolutely. Um, Thank you. Anybody else has any questions
Could
for
I
the
say something
panelists?
really quickly?
Say add something. Please do. Please go ahead.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, please, ma'am.
So
Yeah.
a reason why the census doesn't reflect diversity in our population is very tied to the way that bioessentialism and biomedicalism as an institution is designed to eradicate significance within the human population, right? And so, because there's a lot of shame in the mandatory medical interventions of young intersex children, the reasoning behind it is to punish or hide gender and sexual variance. And so it is absolutely important for me as someone who is not intersex to listen to intersex people when they tell us that they are distinct from transgender and queer people. And in the same time, I would like to discuss how, as gender and sexual minorities, we have so much to learn from each other about how the gender binary invades our bodies, our minds, our socialization, and our dignity for very similar reasons. That bioessentialism is, in a sense, what we are all seeking collective liberation from.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Nad, for adding that point. And that also brings me from the starting point of the discussion that even when it comes to the legal terms, like India's Transgender Act actually puts both intersex and transgender people in the same category. So, like, the legal like the basic understanding is not there when it comes to the legal professionals, so we can't really think beyond that. Which brings me to the next question that we is asking. They're saying that, are intersex people able to find a life partner, as it's a big taboo in India and often put in the category of trans? So any of the panelists, if you want to respond to V's question.
I think I'll go first and I'll pass to Vaso Momo. But yeah, intersex people are able to intersex people are just like everybody else. So we live normal lives. Like we said in the beginning that intersex is not a gender identity or sexual orientation, but intersex people can have any gender identity. Some intersex people do identify as trans, some identify as non-binary, and some do identify as cisgendered. Also, intersex people can be heterosexual, but they can also be lesbian, gay, bisexual, asexual. And a lot of intersex people do have life partners. And it doesn't, I mean, I'm an intersex person that is queer and that identifies as a lesbian, but it doesn't mean that all intersex people, have that identity. Some intersex people are just heterosexual and, they are just intersex people are just normal people like everybody else. I do think what you go through, when you are born and through adolescence, I feel like it does make it more difficult to find a life partner because you already have all of these trust issues. You don't trust the doctors, you don't trust your family, you don't trust anyone, that's made decisions about your body. So I think it's often difficult for you to express yourself and open up to someone. But I think myself, I was in therapy for 7 years and I had to go through a whole journey. And that has made it easier, for me to put myself out there. But obviously, it's not the same for everyone. Like, I also know intersex people that are asexual, that doesn't want sexual relationships, but they do want they do want the life partner, but not necessarily the sexual relationships because of either sensitivity issues or issues of having no feeling whatsoever because of the harmful medical practices. So I think it is difficult or different for everyone. Yeah, but I'll pass to Vaso or Momo. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much, Crystal. You were crystal clear about everything. And yes, we have the percentages of the whole community in our within the sex community. There are people that are identifying as cis. Like me, I was born with a female body. I was assigned female at birth, and I feel a female. And the percentage is more with cis straight intersex people, but we have trans people, gay people, lesbian people, queer people. The percentages are the same with the whole population. It happens to talk about intersex that stigma and medical interventions make the relationship with the body extremely difficult because there is the fear of exposure and to open up. But this is a huge thing, but it happens to everyone out there, maybe in smaller quantities. But from my experience as a psychotherapist, I know that people have fear of intimacy. It's not easy for everyone, for anyone. So we have to think bigger regarding the intersex community. But at the end of the day, let me assure you that we are lovable and and we are loved. I'm with the same person for 25 years. We have 3 children together. And but as Crystal said, I had to put out of me within my therapy path the same for myself, the fear of abandonment that every people carry for every reason. I had to work with this because people relate with what I feel for myself at the end of the day. And that's a rule that applies to everyone. Thank you.
I would quickly like to respond as well. I think the the belief out there is that because it is such a taboo, it's such a rare experience out there to see intersex people or meet an intersex a person. I would like to say that intersex people are fully capable of feeling love, finding love, not finding love as well, companionship, building relationships and life partners, and like anybody else out there. And my question actually would be, the bigger challenge is not whether intersex people are capable of love or relationships, but whether the society creates stigma, shame, misinformation around intersex bodies and identities. Because many intersex people do build chosen families and communities, but because of these experiences, because of their experiences, they're often hidden or treated as a taboo. So people grow up believing that they're somehow less deserving of love, and deserving of love, acceptance, which is simply not true. And I think the questions that we should be asking ourselves is, why does the society make the human diversity so difficult to talk about? And the question or the issue is not intersex people's ability to love or be loved. The issue is the stigma that isolates from the dignity and the understanding that we all deserve. Yeah, that's my food of thought.
Thank you so much. And I think Momo has put it so nicely that, everybody deserves love, and that's the basic core need of a human. So, be it intersex people or any other identity. Um, I would just now, Hiker, I would just like to read out what Hiker has mentioned, where they're saying that it's the one second. Yeah, they're saying that the main reason that they built a WeChat group in China for intersex people to match, and they have more than 100 intersex people in their group and successful matches, 0 to 8, 6 to 8 couples since 2013. I think that's amazing, Hiker. You're doing matchmaking. I think you'll get a lot of blessings from people. So thank you for creating that space. Hiker, would you like to briefly talk about this? And also, if you can put the link of this group, I think our audience would like to also explore that. Hiker, were you able to hear me?
Yes, but it seems my camera is not on. Is it on?
We can see you now. Yeah.
Oh, you can see me. I cannot see myself. So, okay. Yeah, actually, I was found, when I come out and, show up in the media, and people in China discover me. And, and the main suffering is that they couldn't find partner. So that's why I was introduced to them that, oh, they have, like WeChat, before is QQ, it's not WeChat, but after then is WeChat group, is more popular. So we build groups for people to find out, to group intersex people together. And the main purpose is to, find a partner because it's super difficult for intersex people to find a partner, because once we disclose ourselves, then probably the relationship will be just done, just goodbye, say goodbye to us. So it's actually the first intersex person who wrote to me from China. Just talking about this heartbroken story, so many times when she tried to be honest to her partner, then she has to, she has to stop, and it make her, so suffer and try to suicide many times. So that's how difficult in China. I think that for people in China, intersex people in China, it's super difficult to find a partner. Then we have the idea to create this group, and actually everyone come to the group is trying to look for a partner, because we think that at least we are all intersex, even though there are so many different variations between us, but we understand we will not attack people, right? We will not attack people in this point, so we will feel safer. So I think it's very important to feel accepted and safe, and to be understood by your partner in an intimacy relationship. And after so many years, we did, I become the matchmaker successfully in some way. And I will continue this great work. Thank you.
Thank you, Hiker. And I saw Crystal's grinning as you were talking about this. And I'm sure a lot of other intersex people would also, be so happy to hear this. I would just like to read out, also, panelists, as we don't have much time, if you could respond to the questions in the chat. In the meantime, I'll read out the message. So Yogesh is saying that one impression that I get from these discussions is that the medical fraternity is doing only harmful treatments. It's not true. There are some areas that we all have to work together to have a better world for intersex persons, pediatrician surgeons and pediatrician urologists. Absolutely, Dr. Yogesh. I think the objective of these conversation is not to place the blame on any of the stakeholders, but to understand, come from a space where we can understand and learn from each other experiences and do better in whatever capacities we can.
Sanjana, if I may come in here.
Yes, please.
Dr. Yogesh, I am someone, as a medical sociologist, someone who went from doctors are the bane of intersex person's life in 2017. And by the time it had 2019, I had come to the understanding, from talking to both the community and with the medical community about how we need to find a bridge. And this is reflected in how my research was also. I'm a field informed researcher, and this is also there. I have, not just me, Momo was also part of it. There are a lot of other people who are part of it. We work together to actually form a multidisciplinary medical team at one of the hospitals to focus on neonates who are born with variations of sex development or intersex variations, so that they could get the right. And that multidisciplinary had family counselors, psychologists, social workers, along with different medical doctors, so that informed decisions could be made when a child was born. So progress like that is being made. So I am very I know for a fact, not just very sure, I know for a fact that everyone who's sitting here is not saying that uh, you know there are certain things that are systemic problems within medical practice and medical knowledge that is being worked on. We have medical doctors who work with the community globally and in India. And that those efforts are ongoing, have been ongoing for a while, and it will continue. But the truth is that it's a little slow, and we need to catch up. We have a lot of catching up to do. There is, Vaso mentioned this, there is a lot of knowledge out there. Doctors have to educate themselves also in a wider manner. That is all.
Thank you, Nirja. Going to the reading of the chat, Dr. Kanishka Das is saying that when a comprehensive mix is offered from early life with counseling sessions, they're confident and better adjusted. Has been my experience in steering a DSD clinic since 25 years. Um, I would just like to mention here that we do not say DSD. It's not a condition that we talk about. We say intersex variations. So, in the medical conversations, also, it's very important that we use the right terminologies because the language really defines how we understand certain identities. Um, Trupti is asking, so people, if you can respond, as the time is already up. So if the panelists could please respond to the questions. I would just like to bring in about just one bit that about education inclusive spaces. So when we are saying inclusive education for intersex adolescent, which means creating schools and learning spaces where they feel safe, respected, visible, and able to participate without feeling shame or discriminated. And when we say inclusive school spaces, we do not mean that, it's not just about allowing intersex students into school, but it's also about ensuring that the school environment recognizes that bodies and experiences can be diverse. And one of the schools that has been doing it in Bangalore, India, is Purna School, wherein they have intersex children, they have transgender children in the school, and they bring in inclusivity through uniforms where there are no assigned uniforms for the students. Anyone, the students can wear whatever they want to wear. There's no policing, there is no hierarchy in terms of uniforms. And even the toilets, for that matter, they have a girls boys uh, a washroom, but at the same time they also have a gender neutral or like a common washroom for everybody. And even the curriculum that they have is an inclusive curriculum that they have themselves made to integrate more identities in the school syllabus, as India still does not have a very inclusive curriculum. So efforts like these, where uh, inclusive education means, like, a young person or an adolescent can sit in a classroom feeling that, that there's nothing wrong with me, I too belong here. And these are the spaces. So at its heart, inclusive education for intersex adolescent is about dignity, bodily autonomy, safety, and growing up without any shame. So
Sanjana, on
yes,
this
thank
point, I
you.
would also like to say that the current value education books that Enfold was part of, which are being rolled out by the government of Karnataka from grade 1 to grade 10 onwards, they have the term intersex variations in grade 10. And before that, from grade 6 onwards, when we are talking about pubertal changes, we say that there are bodies can be categorized as those, the female, male, and those with variations. So that is introduced right from grade 6 onwards. Puberty is also presented as an inclusive puberty, that the changes are common across all sexes. And it does the degree varies, how much hair, how much height, how much fat, how much breast or will develop or not will depend on the organs and the various other characteristics, the chromosomes and other things that are present. We don't present puberty as this is what happens in the boys and this is what happens in girls or male bodies or female bodies. No, it's always an inclusive way so that all children are included of all sexes. Right from grade 1 onwards, we talk of there are many sexes, there are many genders for genders, we say there are some who call themselves girls, some call themselves boys, and some call themselves other names. So in that way, in a gradual manner, right from grade 1 onwards, we have introduced this in the Karnataka value education books.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you, Samita for bringing this. Which also reminds me that there are a lot of people who have joined from different organizations who are working in this space. So, just like to reiterate that when we are talking about the difference between sex and gender, or when we are having conversation around gender and sexuality, please do mention, that when we're talking about sex, there are three sexes that exist: male, female, and intersex. We cannot talk about gender without saying that there are different there are beyond two sexes, there's also intersex identity that exists, which I see some of the organization haven't started those conversation. So but as we are at the end of this today's conversation, um, throughout the panel discussion, I kept thinking that how powerful it is when people are finally given the space to tell their stories, and that too in their own words. And so many intersex people grow up hearing silence around their bodies and experiences or stigmas, and yet today we heard honesty, courage, pain, resilience, and hope. And I think one of the most powerful things that we can offer young people is not perfect answers. As Momo also said, that, they do not expect the adults to be perfect. They just want people who can be present, someone who listens to them without shame, who can say that, I don't have the answers right now, but I will find it out. Or, your body is not a problem to be fixed. It deserves the same right, dignity, and care. So I hope that today we can leave this conversation not only with more awareness about intersex experiences, but with little bit of more tenderness and curiosity in the way we engage with intersex adolescents and how they navigate their bodies, their identity, their selfhood. Because when even one young person feels less alone after conversation like these, that's all that matters to us. That's the entire objective of these meetings. And I was just speaking to Momo about this, that even if one person, one person from the audience leaves with a better understanding of intersex, our job is done. So thank you so much to all the panelists for trusting us with your stories, with your vulnerabilities and your wisdom. I know these are not easy conversations. It can be very triggering to go through, to remind yourself of those experiences and to share it. So thank you so much, like really big thank you to all of you. And also thank you to everyone who joined us today with so much like openness and empathy, and for staying back till 7 o'clock. So thank you so much for joining us. I would also request if you can. We have a global coalition page where you can where you can become a member, and uh, sorry, one second, where you can become a member and support sexual education in your own communities. So, yeah, I've pasted the link, and we'll also be sharing the webinar recording along with the meeting reports and the resources from the panelists. And I would also like to give a big, big thank you and hug to our moderator, Nirja. Thank you so much for being here. And I know we always reach out to you for anything related to intersex, and also to Hiker, who has been such a big supporter, and for connecting us to Crystal and Vasu. So really thank you to all of you for joining us today. Thank you so much. Have a very good evening.
Thank you, everybody. Good
Thank
night.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you,
everyone.
Thank
everybody.
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Also, thank you, Dr.
Dr.
Renuka and Saurav. Sorry.
Thank you, Dr. Renuka Saurav. Thank you so much. Okay, I will end.